This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The United Nations Security Council holds an emergency meeting on Afghanistan as thousands try to flee after the Taliban capture Kabul. Zambia's outgoing president concedes defeat after his rival Hakainde Hichilema was declared winner of the presidential poll. And Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari goes into self-isolation after arriving back from a trip to the UK. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. With me is Raman Yang with a preview of your business news.
That's right, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in the next half hour. Cost of living in Egypt's urban areas is rising at the fastest pace in July. We'll look at the data. And we'll explore how South Africa is working to rope in more people into using cashless payment systems. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest of current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks, Raman. Well, we begin with the latest news coming out of Afghanistan, where Taliban fighters are patrolling the streets of Kabul after capturing the capital on Sunday. The group says the war in Afghanistan is over and a new government will be announced soon. The United States has temporarily halted all evacuation flights from Kabul to clear the airfield. At least 7 people were killed and many others injured as thousands stormed the city's airport in an attempt to leave the country. The mayor of Kabul says the Taliban wants the city's administration to continue doing their jobs.
Yes, I'm still the mayor of Kabul. I was in touch with the leadership of the Taliban yesterday and today, and they want us to continue our job and provide our much needed service to the city of 5 million people. And my staff and I and the whole municipality is prepared to deal with our responsibilities, and although the times are a little more anxious times, but we have to do our job. The embassy and its surroundings is very quiet. The airport is quiet. There's the amount of rush and the number of people is really disproportionate to the size of the airport. But it's no skirmishes, no military operation. At the moment, not all Taliban leadership are in the country, nor are they in Kabul. They're just coming in and pouring in from different parts of the country and also from abroad. So only time will tell the composition of the future government and the guidelines with which the government will operate until we have a new announcement about the constitution or whatever fills that void. So therefore, it's too early to measure up to any other international standards.
The United Nations Security Council has been meeting over the situation in Afghanistan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the Taliban and all other parties in Afghanistan to exercise the utmost restraint to protect lives. Well, let's go live now to New York, where CGTN's John Terrett is live with us for more on this. John, of course, we've heard there that the Secretary General is calling for restraint. But tell us about some of the other messages coming from the UN Security Council meeting as far as their concern over the Taliban takeover.
Well, Lindy, it's just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon here. The meeting began at about 10 o'clock local time and ended roughly an hour ago. It was more or less an in-person meeting in the chamber in UN headquarters behind me, chaired by the Indians who are in the chair for the month of August. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, briefed the meeting at the outset, and these are some of the key things that he had to say. He called upon the Security Council to use all the tools at its disposal to try to help Afghanistan. He said the UN would go on supporting Afghanistan, not least of all through UNAMA, which is the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. The Secretary General talked about hearing chilling reports about what is happening in parts of Afghanistan now, where the Taliban are in control, to women and to children. He called for an end to the violence, as you said. He called for all international agreements that Afghanistan has so far signed up to be honored. And memorably, he said never again must Afghanistan be used as a platform for terrorism. Now, the options for the Security Council regarding Afghanistan and Kabul at this relatively late stage, I think, are fairly limited, but they do turn on the issue of negotiating with the Taliban. So let me now tell you about what other people in that meeting today said. Ghulam Isaaqzai is the permanent representative of Afghanistan to the United Nations. He talked about the Taliban's broken promises. He talked about seeing gruesome images from around the country. He talked about reports of door-to-door killings going on now, even in Kabul, and targeted killings as well, and said the people of Kabul are now living in fear. And for his part, the China Deputy UN Envoy to the United Nations, Deng Shuang, said that China, for its part, has always and does even today champion a political solution that is suitable for all the people of Afghanistan, acceptable for all the people of Afghanistan. He said Afghanistan is at an historic crossroads, and he called for negotiations that were open and inclusive, that would lead to an open and inclusive government. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because the Taliban has been saying through its international spokespeople more or less the same thing. They've been saying, look, we don't want to have a complete takeover of the country. We do want a negotiated settlement, and we do want to be part of an inclusive coalition government. The best hope on the horizon for diplomats at the moment appears to be the legitimacy test. The Taliban has let it be known that it doesn't want to be the international pariah that it was between 1996 and the year 2001 when it last ran Afghanistan. And that seems to be the best hope, to try and keep the Taliban, as it were, realistic while you negotiate with them to form some kind of new government and administration in Kabul that may be acceptable to the rest of the world. Now, the question is, has the Taliban changed? Well, a lot of people do not think so, and reports coming in from all over the country suggest that they have not. But one key may be Pakistan, which, like China, is a neighbor to Afghanistan, but unlike China, is a very, very close ally with the Taliban. They are the ones, Pakistan is the ones who managed to get together the talks in Doha that have been going on for several months, and there are two delegations from Afghanistan in Pakistan talking about this situation at the moment. So if anybody can keep the Taliban realistic, it is the Pakistanis. Now, finally, what about President Joe Biden here in North America? It is said that he spent the weekend at Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland, watching along with the rest of America in shock, really, at the speed with which the Taliban has taken over, and the shocking scenes that we've seen today, Sunday to Monday, from the Hamid Karzai International Airport, with hundreds, if not thousands, of Afghanis clinging on to US military jets as they move along the tarmac, and even reports of some Afghanis hanging on to those jets as they take off and falling off. Now, the diplomatic community thinks that there was no right or wrong decision regarding pulling out of Afghanistan. If the Americans weren't doing it now, they've been doing it in a year or a year from now, and probably similar scenes would be played out. But it does look to all the world as if the Biden administration, which was told time and time again how best to handle this pullout, and in fact not to do it just yet, that this is the wrong time, it does look as if the Biden administration has botched the pullout. Now, Biden is going to address the American people in just under 3 hours from now about the situation in Kabul, but it is certainly possible that this that we see playing out in Afghanistan this last weekend will come to define his presidency. Lindy?
Indeed, that is the assumption at the moment. Thank you so much, John, for that comprehensive overview of the international reaction, joining us live from New York. While staying with the international response, China is calling for the restoration of peace in Afghanistan, saying it respects the will of the Afghan people.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying has made Beijing's stance clear. She said China expects an inclusive political arrangement that is acceptable to all Afghan people and for a lasting peace in a country that has been at war for decades.
The situation in Afghanistan has undergone major changes. China respects the will and the choices of the Afghan people. The war there has lasted for over 40 years. Bringing an end to the war and realizing peace is the common aspiration of the more than 30 million Afghan people and the international community.
Hua added China hopes all forms of terrorism and crimes can be curbed so that Afghan people can stay away from war and rebuild their homeland.
China noted that yesterday, the Taliban said the war in Afghanistan is over and that they will negotiate to form an open and inclusive Islamic government and take responsible actions to ensure the safety of Afghan citizens and foreign missions in the country.
China says it looks forward to seeing these words translated into action so a smooth transition of power can take place. Liu Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, let's take a closer look now at what this Taliban takeover means for the United States and international military intervention. And for that, we're joined by Professor Max Abrams, a professor of political science at Northeastern University in the United States. He's live with us via Zoom from Boston. Professor, thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about the cost of military intervention. We've seen this Taliban takeover happen in such a short space of time. This, of course, after 20 years of U.S. troop presence in Afghanistan, ended in a withdrawal about a month ago. How would you compare what we're seeing now to what happened in Libya after the U.S. intervened there?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think there are definitely similarities and differences. In the Libya case, the intervention, of course, was against the leader of the country, against the Gaddafi regime. I think that there were two interrelated goals. One was, to remove the leader, but that wasn't so much the explicit goal. The more explicit goal was to protect the population. And of course, those two goals got intertwined, such that when the leader was taken out, with the international community, U.S. intervention, as well as rebels on the ground, the United States famously cheered, indicating that killing Gaddafi was in fact the goal. And immediately after that was achieved, the international community basically left. And then Libya would just go into complete turmoil, and no single entity would emerge as the leader of the country. There would be three governments at various times, all sorts of militant groups with large amounts of international intervention in the form of proxy wars. The U.S. path in Afghanistan was quite different, of course. The U.S. went into Afghanistan right after 9/11, mainly to combat al-Qaeda. When we got there, what the U.S. found out was that there weren't actually that many high-value terrorists to get. Bin Laden was gone. And then the U.S. mission morphed into a humanitarian operation. There was more talk about nation building, promoting democracy. And in that sense, there were some parallels between Afghanistan and Libya, in the sense that the U.S. was now defending these missions in terms of their normative benefits, in terms of promoting values that the United States believes in. But in both cases, what we're looking at now is that the U.S. Wants to get out. And both countries are arguably left worse off than before.
And that's exactly why we're seeing U.S. President Joe Biden face really a storm of criticism and something that some are saying will be a stain on his presidency. What does the success of the Taliban mean for the image of the United States in the international political arena?
Well, there are different minds on this question. There's a lot of talk about, how dare the Biden administration remove American troops from that country? Look at all the chaos there. Things are much worse now than they were just a month ago. On the other hand, one could look at it and ask the question of, how was the United States there for so long? It's not as if the United States didn't try to engage in nation building. The U.S. dropped something like $2 trillion to build up Afghanistan. About $88 billion went to the Afghan military. And what we've seen over the past couple weeks, especially this past week, is that when the U.S. announced that it was definitely leaving, the Taliban just easily carved through the country. And it turned out that there basically was no Afghan military. There wasn't a lot of fighting. And this suggests that nation building all along had been a giant failure. And so what we're seeing now, the chaos, isn't necessarily caused, certainly single-handedly by the Biden administration. It's more of a reflection. It's more of an indictment of the fact that 20 years of massive American investment failed to build up a viable alternative to the Taliban. And so I hope that the international community draws the right lesson. And the right lesson, in my mind, has to do with the limitations of the United States and frankly, any other country in the world to positively affect, foreign countries' internal domestic politics, rather than the message that when a country is deployed abroad, it must stay there in perpetuity.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for that. Professor Max Abrams joining us from Boston via Zoom. That is where we leave our coverage of the Afghanistan crisis for now. We'll bring you further updates as they come up. Let's turn now to Zambia, where outgoing President Edgar Lungo has conceded defeat after the Electoral Commission declared his rival Hakainde Hichilema the winner of Thursday's presidential poll. The president-elect now has promised a better democracy, but as Wilkista Nyabwa reports, the incoming president has a huge task ahead as Zambia battles COVID-19 related economic challenges.
After 6 attempts at the presidency, Hakainde Hichilema has finally clinched it.
My fellow citizens of Zambia, it is with great honor, humility, gratitude that I stand before you today to say change is here.
And the celebrations among his supporters capture his moment of victory and expectations.
The new government coming in place, we can at least see that they'll find jobs for us to do. But then with the old regime, which was based on cadres just getting work and opportunity, this is the change that we needed. That's why people are happy. Disgruntled youths, that's what they called us. And now we show them that we're not disgruntled. We're actually the youths that make the change. We control our democracy. We've showed them.
Hichilema, who is an accountant by profession, beat incumbent Edgar Lungo by garnering over 2.8 million votes. Lungo managed to get just over 1.8 million ballots. Election monitors say Zambians have done it again by exercising their democratic rights peacefully.
This is a very momentous occasion for Zambia. We have had a number of elections in this country and a number of peaceful transitions. So this is yet another milestone for Zambia in that we have been able to hold successful elections, and we are obviously going to see a very peaceful transition. So that's a very big plus for us as a country, and we all deserve to celebrate this.
Outgoing President Edgar Lungo, in a live broadcast on state radio and TV, conceded defeat, promising a peaceful transfer of power. He had earlier indicated his displeasure with the outcome. He said the polls were marred by violence and that his party officials were chased away from polling centers. As celebrations die down and Hichilema gets down to work, a huge task lies ahead of him. Zambia is grappling with high unemployment among young people. The COVID-19 pandemic has also dealt a blow to livelihoods. These, together with falling copper prices on the international market, have made the going tough for the Southern African nation. These are some of the issues that may have contributed to the outcome of this election, and Hichilema must now take them head on. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up after the break. Ghana on high alert after Ebola and the Marburg virus are reported in neighboring countries.
The Taliban regime is coming to an end.
There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof.
Let's start in Haiti, where the death toll from a powerful earthquake has soared to over 1,200 as additional bodies were recovered on Sunday evening in Lekki. At least 5,700 people were injured in the disaster, with thousands displaced from their homes. There were several aftershocks, including a magnitude 5.9 quake. Hundreds of homes and buildings have collapsed. This is the largest earthquake to hit Haiti since a magnitude 7 earthquake devastated the Caribbean island country in 2010, killing 200,000 people. An additional disaster looms over Haiti as the nation braces itself for a possible hit by Tropical Storm Grace, predicted to reach the country on Monday night. Egypt has hosted a series of meetings to discuss Libya with top US and Libyan officials. The commander of the Libyan National Army, General Khalifa Haftar, and the Speaker of the Libyan Parliament, Akila Saleh, have spent the past few days in Cairo. They held discussions with the US Ambassador to Libya, Richard Norland, who traveled to the Egyptian capital specifically to meet the duo. Now, this comes after political tensions escalated in recent days over who controls the Libyan army. Adel Al-Makhroui has the details.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi discussed the Libyan developments with CIA Director William Burns in Cairo on Sunday. This is the last of week-long meetings which the Egyptian capital hosted to prevent the political process in its eastern neighbor from collapsing. Earlier, the commander of the Libyan National Army, Khalifa Haftar, refused to follow the UN-endorsed executive authority, putting the entire road to elections in jeopardy.
Recently, some Libyan leaders appeared to be diverting from the UN political roadmap that aims at unifying Libyan institutions. This process became fragile lately. The recent moves by Haftar and Akila Saleh concerned Egypt. Saleh tried to pass an election law without agreement from Western politicians, and Haftar says he won't obey any Libyan authority.
Haftar and the Speaker of the Libyan Parliament, Akila Saleh, both came to Cairo for talks. The Egyptian presidency organized a meeting for each of them independently with the U.S. ambassador to Libya, Richard Norland. In a tour that included Turkey, Norland stressed that all involved parties an insurance for the safety of the upcoming elections in December.
Hosting the U.S. ambassador to Libya gives the impression that Egypt is trying to rally more international support for the political process in Libya. It is trying to bring points of view between Aguilar's political vision and the military aspect which Haftar is concerned with closer. These two approaches can get along because the latest escalation indicates that there could be division once again.
The Cairo talks concluded without any meeting announced between Haftar and Egyptian officials.
Egypt does not want to see any escalation of hostilities in Libya. It doesn't want war on its eastern border or even in Libya's central region of Sirte and Jufra. Haftar's attitude has been lately clashing with the Egyptian vision. Egypt has in the past endorsed him, but now his attitude is diplomatically causing embarrassment to Egypt. So it is natural that Egypt refrains from appearing with him publicly.
Libya is at a turning point. Recent escalations could see it fall into deep division once again, or international powers can help the North African nation stay on the elections track. عادل المحروي, CGTN, Cairo.
Ghana says it's on high alert to prevent outbreaks of Ebola and the Marburg virus in the country. This comes after neighboring Cote d'Ivoire recorded its first case of Ebola after 25 years, while Guinea confirmed a case of the Marburg virus 2 weeks ago. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Ghana's health service says it is stepping up surveillance across its borders to get the country ready to tackle any outbreak of the Ebola and Marburg virus diseases. The Ebola virus was detected in neighboring Ivory Coast on Saturday. Health officials in the West African country said the patient traveled from neighboring Guinea. She was admitted at a hospital in Abidjan after experiencing a fever. The city is home to more than 4 million people, and health officials say the threat of an outbreak is of immense concern. While Guinea recorded an outbreak of Ebola early this year, it was declared over in June. However, the World Health Organization says the confirmed case in Ivory Coast is not linked to its neighboring country, Guinea. Meanwhile, Guinea has also recorded a case of the Marburg virus, which experts say is similar to Ebola. Ghana's land borders remain closed since the outbreak of COVID-19. And the government says it will continue to tighten security at the borders to prevent an outbreak of the Ebola and Marburg virus diseases. The Ebola outbreak between 2014 and 2016 killed thousands of people in West Africa. Health officials in Ghana have, however, been advised to be alert and report any suspected cases of the diseases. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has gone into self-isolation after arriving back from a trip to the UK. The decision is in line with guidelines set by the country's Center for Disease Control for international travelers. CGTN's Phil Ihaza reports from Abuja.
President Buhari may have been double vaccinated against COVID-19, but he's currently observing a 10-day self-isolation. It follows a 2-week trip to the UK with a number of senior government officials who are also isolating. They include the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of State for Education, the National Security Advisor, and Director General of the National Intelligence Agency. Mr. Buhari and his entourage joined other world leaders to attend the Global Education Summit, after which the president had a routine medical checkup. Also, while in London, Buhari met with diplomats at the Nigerian High Commission. The High Commission was then closed last week after some of the staff tested positive for the coronavirus. Nigeria has been dealing with rising cases of COVID-19 since June, and as a result, the president's aide says President Buhari and the other officials will be subjected to all the health protocols, including periodic testing, even while in isolation. The UK is currently experiencing a third wave of infections with more than 25,000 COVID cases a day. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Tunisia's health ministry is launching a special vaccination campaign for migrants and foreign nationals in the country. The goal is to inoculate some 200,000 people. More than 600,000 COVID-19 jabs were administered to Tunisians across the country on the second day of intensive vaccinations. Adnan Chouachi has the details from Tunis.
The president of the Mauritanian community in Tunisia attended the launch of the vaccination drive for African and foreign nationals.
We have invited the whole Mauritanian community residing in Tunisia to get vaccinated. We thank the Tunisian authorities and the health department for making this operation possible and very simple. Any Mauritanian national can register for vaccination and get his first jab in less than 15 minutes.
Mohammed is a Mauritanian citizen who studied in Nouakchott before pursuing his PhD studies at the University of Tunis. He's one of the first African students to get inoculated in Tunisia.
As a Mauritanian student in Tunisia, I have the same rights as Tunisian students. The vaccination operation is smooth. Now I feel safer after getting my vaccine. It's important to resume a normal life and to return to university just like any Tunisian citizen.
The Tunisian Scientific Committee at the COVID-19 Task Force has approved the vaccination of all foreign communities and individuals residing in the North African country.
The vaccination campaign in Tunisia does not exclude anyone. All nationalities and all residents in this country have the right to get vaccinated. Vaccines should be shared because this initiative promotes public health and saves lives.
During the peak of COVID-19 infections and deaths in July in Tunisia, Mauritania and several African and foreign countries sent medical equipment to help the North African state in the fight against the pandemic. The Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights has urged the health department to organize COVID-19 vaccination campaigns for refugees and asylum seekers, as well as irregular migrants. Experts say this operation could be launched in partnership with civil society organizations. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Joint Rwandan and Mozambican security forces say they've reclaimed several towns in northern Mozambique, among them Palma, the site of a deadly attack in March this year. But as soldiers and police try to restore a sense of safety, residents are still hesitant to return to their homes. Here's CGTN's Asta Tal with more details.
In March, the busy town of Palma was attacked by militants. Residents fled the town seeking safety. Now, a joint Mozambican-Rwandan force is trying to convince them it's safe to return. The joint force says it has made steady gains in the north, regaining territory from rebels.
We came here with the Mozambican police for a confidence-building patrol. We want to show our presence. The population is coming back, but they're still very scared and they're not feeling safe.
The fears for residents extend beyond worrying about future militant attacks. There is mistrust among some of them for the Mozambican security forces.
They are not protecting us, they're killing us. If they were protecting us, then we would be living in peace, but that is not the case.
Mozambican security forces have faced allegations of abuse in their fight against insurgents. Human Rights Watch reported in early August that security forces prevented Palma residents from fleeing. Army officials at the time defended the measures, claiming insurgents were hiding among the civilian population. Now they patrol the streets of Palma, hoping to restore a sense of security there. Asta Tal, CGTN.
Let's now go to Roman Young for your latest business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. The cost of living in Egypt's urban areas has risen at the fastest pace in July. We'll have the numbers. And we'll explore how South Africa is trying to rope in more people into using cashless payment systems.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Let's start with some macro data from up north. Consumer prices in urban parts of Egypt have risen at their fastest pace since December. Annual core inflation accelerated to 6.1% in July compared to 4.9% the previous month. That's according to the latest data set from the state-run statistics agency. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with the details from Cairo.
The rapid inflation rise in the North African state is owed to a cut in energy subsidies that have pushed the cost of power upwards, in addition to an increase in food and cigarettes prices.
There's a price increase in vegetables. It's a big increase which is being clearly felt by the people. Vegetables have shot up, although the supply is very good. All products are available in the market, and I think that has helped keep the prices from going up further.
Of course, there is a price hike. Meat, for instance, has increased especially due to the Eid activities. When I changed my car's oil, I discovered the price had increased as well as the fuel prices, which went up last month.
Despite latest inflation rising to 6.1%, the highest in more than 7 months, experts say it's still in the safe zone.
If inflation had increased on a permanent basis and exceeded the safe zone set by the central bank, it would be harmful economically. Of course, higher inflation leads to higher prices of consumer goods in the markets. It also leads to higher interest rates at banks, which would prevent investors from taking loans to grow and expand their businesses.
The IMF had set an inflation range of between 6% to 9% during talks with Egypt's central bank, as the North African country secured loan deals to stabilize its economy. Experts say the central bank is now playing a balancing act, trying to adhere to the required IMF inflation range without affecting low and middle-income earners.
The IMF target is to increase the GDP in goods and services, but this production increase should be met with enough demand to cover the cost of production. So, the financial institution is seeking an inflationary trend based on higher demand, not higher cost of production. The central bank has been adopting balanced policies which aim at keeping inflation rates under control and dealing with it spontaneously by raising or reducing interest rates. The bank's policies were successful and the current inflation rates are still in the safe zone.
Most experts believe the recent price hikes have been partly influenced by the surge in demand during the Ramadan and Eid festive seasons, as well as the summer vacations, but this trend is expected to drop in the next few months and thereby pull down inflation. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Cash is still king in South Africa, but ever since the COVID-19 pandemic landed, digital payments have gotten a bit of a leg up to getting a fair bit of popularity. But service fees, the lack of interoperability between various payment systems are acting as a deterrent for many customers and SMEs. CGTN's Astatal has that story.
Co-owner of coffee cream company Nazarene Jacquet has installed SnapScan. The app is downloaded on a user's mobile phone, thereby enabling SnapScan to access their bank accounts. At the point of sale, the user scans a QR code in the merchant shop.
So how the process works is at the end of every business day, SnapScan will do a recon on how many transactions and the value of those transactions, and they will process one lump sum the following morning, less a service fee and administrative charge. So we will receive one bulk payment the next day of business for all transactions concluded the previous day.
But only about a third of her customers use this mode of payment. She believes that the reluctance is a result of trust issues. Customers fear giving a third party access to their bank accounts. There are other reasons too.
Well, the cost of data, number one, inside the country is quite a bit. Number two, we offer a Wi-Fi facility here, but when we are going through load shedding, the Wi-Fi gets cut off and then there's no more data for the customers, which forces them either to use a debit or credit card, or in the instance where they have cash available.
As a business owner, she's also deterred from offering this digital payment method because she has to pay for the service. Nazarene has to pay 3.39% of all sales processed through SnapScan in her coffee shop, and the money doesn't appear in her account immediately. The executive of emerging payments at one of South Africa's leading banks, Chipo Mushawana, acknowledges the challenges facing small businesses in particular. She says currently 9 out of 10 South Africans use cash, but she's confident that this is coming to an end. 11 banks in the country are involved in a new digitization project.
Now, the reason why I single out this program is because extensive work and research was done across the entire industry, looking at markets such as Asia, etc., that have driven digital payment capabilities such as QR codes, etc. And on the basis of our findings, we have designed our very own in South Africa called Rapid Payments.
There are many benefits to having a digital currency, she says.
First and foremost is the safety aspect. Due to global pandemics such as COVID-19, all of us have been sensitized to the need for cashless transactions. And I think that's definitely one thing that we need to be focused on.
She says the new rapid payment system is expected to come into effect at the end of next year. Astatal, CGTN.
On to something a little bit different now, our continuing series on Kenya's Masai Mara. Hundreds of tour vans crisscross the Mara every single day, carrying visitors to view the game reserve's many attractions. Now, these vehicles do cover hundreds of kilometers a day on roads that are often pretty treacherous. So how do they pull it off, and how is this fleet maintained? CGTN's Robert Nagila finds out.
This is Talek town, situated about a kilometer from the Masai Mara's Talek Gate. And it provides an important service towards the Masai Mara experience many of us travel thousands of kilometers for. On any given day, there are dozens of tour vehicles littered across this small, vibrant town undergoing repairs of some sort. There are more garages, spare part shops and tyre repair centres than any other businesses in Talek, catering for the hundreds of tour vehicles that operate in the game reserve. Daniel Bugwa runs this open-air garage in Talek and employs 12 mechanics. Daniel says the volume of traffic is tied to the busy seasons in the reserve.
The drivers finish work in the park at 6 p.m. and then we start working on the vehicles, sometimes until curfew begins. We work with seasons, from July to December. When the visitors leave, there is no work. The work decreases in the low season and we spend what we made during the high season.
Covering an area of about 370,000 acres, the Masai Mara Reserve boasts of about 90 animal and 500 bird species, making it one of the most unique ecosystems in the world. The best way to experience its attractions is by road, but the roads inside the game reserve are rough, dusty and rocky in some sections. On a full load of passengers, it takes its toll on the vehicles.
Sometimes when you are in the Masai Mara Reserve, you might get some breakdown for the vehicle and you need some surveys. And the best place you can get and to buy some spare is just the next town called the Tarek.
Across the road from Daniel's garage, Ibrahim Simei is busy repairing a flat tire from one of the tour vehicles at his open-air repair shop. He says business was badly affected in 2020 when visitors stopped coming to the Mara due to COVID-19 restrictions.
Things were bad at the time. You could make $3 a day if you were lucky. Before COVID, I was making about $50.
There are also 2 car wash centers here where drivers have their vehicles cleaned before the next dusty game drive. The town also provides accommodation and supplies to the drivers, making it one big service center. It's a small town whose fortunes are directly tied to the Masai Mara. You could also say that Talek keeps the Masai Mara Game Reserve moving. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Talek, Narok County, Kenya.
Overseas financial bodies are taking advantage of China's gradual opening up of its market for the financial sector and playing a big role in the further development of capital markets there. The opening up policy is also creating more investment opportunities for overseas investors as well. Jiang Shishuan has the details.
Having been doing business in China for 14 years, Fullerton became the first Singapore-based asset management company to be granted the RMB Qualified Foreign Institutional Investor status and approved for dealing on the China interbank bond market in 2014. With its wholly foreign-owned entity in Shanghai, the company launched its first equity private fund in China in 2018. Since then, it has been offering services to not just overseas clients, but also to domestic investors. And it's been good business. Its investments have seen an annualized return rate of 14.6%. And the company is looking forward to more.
The A-share market is behaving quite reasonably, and as the Chinese economy continues to grow, listed companies have high-quality assets with large profit capabilities and potentials. And since the outbreak, China's overall monetary policy has remained relatively loose. So we're optimistic about the mainland stock market and the bond market as well.
The growing market is showing it's attractive to plenty of newcomers as well. JP Morgan has just announced that the regulator has given it the green light to take complete ownership of JP Morgan Securities China from its 4 Chinese shareholders, making it the first foreign firm to fully own a securities venture here. The company says that China represents one of the largest opportunities in the world for many of its clients and for itself, and it will also help Chinese companies grow internationally. These developments not only highlight the enthusiasm for foreign financial institutions for operating in China, but also reflect Chinese regulators' resolve to advance financial liberalization. In recent years, more than 100 foreign invested banks and insurance, securities, payment, and clearing institutions have been approved and set up here. They've been actively expanding the scope of financial businesses, especially since the Chinese government scrapped foreign ownership limits on securities firms and mutual funds last year.
We help companies with their business registration, location choices, and recruitment. We are working on spreading information about our policies so as to let overseas firms better understand us and strengthen their confidence in operating here.
Experts say the arrival of the foreign invested financial institutions will bring more diversified financial derivative products and businesses to the mainland market, accelerating its upgrading and internationalization, but at the same time potentially putting pressure on domestic firms.
Domestic firms are good at serving local firms, raising money domestically. In terms of business transactions, due to their lack of retail channels and their lower commissions, overseas firms will probably avoid competing with local firms in traditional retail business transactions and credit trading. But they will present great challenges to local firms in serving high-end or high-net-worth clients.
In the first half of this year, overseas investors increased their holdings of yuan-denominated bond by over 450 billion yuan, up 40% year-on-year. And a State Council executive meeting in July announced that China's financial liberalization will continue. Regulations on cross-border transactions between parent and subsidiary firms will be improved, and there are to be more ways opened for foreign capital to participate in domestic financial markets. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
And I'll leave it there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In Global Business, we'll be looking at the task ahead for Zambia's President-elect Hakainde Hichilema, 6th time lucky at the ballot box, but he faces a challenge of reviving the country's struggling economy. And remember, Zambia was Africa's first pandemic-era sovereign defaulter last year. So where does it take the country from here? We'll find out and bring you the details. See you at 1800 GMT. For now, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, let's take a short break. Your sports news coming up next.